Hi guys and welcome back. Following my last video where I gave a brief introduction to the world of my first novel, Bygone Dawn, I wanted to kind of kickstart this series of videos I'm doing on this novel with one of my favorite subjects surrounding it, which is that of the creatures actually featured in the novel. In the post-apocalyptic and transformed world of Bygone Dawn, all of the creatures that rule the land, sea and air are heavily based off of prehistoric animals. However, when I was designing the world of Bygone Dawn, in this world I wanted to separate these creatures into different categories. The first of which we're going to be talking about here today, because the most important creatures in regards to this story are a group of beings known as the Changed, which are the main characters of the story. People that have been transformed into human-minded saurian creatures, each completely visually and genetically distinct from one another. Now, in this book, along with the sequel that I'm working on, there are dozens of changes that make appearances. However, for this video, I'm going to be focusing on the central characters that the plot revolves around, and what prehistoric creatures inspired their designs. The first of which being Lucian Taylor, the poster child and flagship creature design of this series. When I initially came up with the design for Lucian years ago, it was originally kind of just a generic two-legged theropod with a sharp tail, some feathering, and these two backwards curving slope crests that come off of his head, and a long snout. And while this design evolved quite a bit over the years, there was a kind of general shape that was kept, and this is kind of a running theme with a lot of creature designs in this story. However, eventually I actually wound up deciding on a Caprasuchus-based design for the main character. Caprasuchus was a prehistoric crocodile that lived in North Africa that is most well known for its impressive set of teeth, earning it the nickname of the Boar Croc. For many years, this has been one of my absolute favorite prehistoric animals, and once the kind of idea clicked to base my main character's design around this creature, I couldn't help myself. I had to go with it. It's such a cool animal, and to be able to feature in my writing was a lot of fun. Now, when I started writing this book years ago, Caprasuchus was kind of more famously known in the media as a kind of quote-unquote terrestrial crocodile, a long-legged, agile, land-based hunter. In more recent years, there's been a lot of pushback against this idea of a semi-terrestrial Caprasuchus from the paleontological community, more or less for the reason that there's no evidence to actually suggest that this crocodile was semi-terrestrial. It could have easily just have been semi-aquatic, had shorter legs. We have yet to find enough fossil evidence to support such a theory. As the story of Bygone Dawn progresses, Lucian Taylor kind of evolves into this kind of almost like an explorer of this new dangerous world. So I wanted his design to kind of reflect that. He's basically a walking all-terrain vehicle. He's an adept swimmer, quite quick on land when he needs to be as well. And though he is only a hatchling and juvenile in the first book, he will grow to be quite a large creature by the time book 2 comes around. And between his tusks, armored scales, claws, and tail feathers, he's well equipped to defend himself against the many threats of the new world. At least in terms of physicality. When it comes to his mentality, Lucian, at least when the story begins, actually is not well equipped to handle this new world. He's quite shy and he is petrified of confrontation. So when he gets thrown suddenly into this violent and turbulent new world, he finds himself completely overwhelmed and out of his depth. Which is where we come to the next character, one of Lucian's close friends, Jenny Riddle. Jenny is much more hard-edged, and she, due to her experiences in her childhood, she's a lot more mentally equipped to take on this new and violent world. And I wanted those aspects to be reflected in her design. Originally, her creature design, when I designed it years ago, was a lot more Spinosaurus in nature. There, she had very the kind of quintessential Spinosaurus jaws, and I even remember designing a sort of split sail. And keep in mind, this was actually a few years before Ichthyovenator was described. Yeah, I did have a similar kind of split sail design as we see in that animal, which was rather fun. However, I did wind up scrapping that idea as time went on, and I kind of leaned more towards a dromaeosaurid design as her character evolved as I was writing the story. Jenny's design philosophy was rather simple. I wanted her to be leaf-looking and striking. The red feathers were a very early idea that kind of stuck with me throughout the whole design, and it became a quintessential feature of her creature design. This crimson plumage that kind of naturally screams danger to any creatures that set their eyes upon it. So in short, Jenny is a fighter, and that of course makes her an incredibly valuable asset to the main characters, along with the fact that she is a trusted friend and she harbors in her soul a deep need to protect those that she loves. But she will have to make that choice down the line of how quick should she be to violence in this world. Being hardwired to respond to danger is not a bad thing in this new world, but there's a line that you don't want to cross there, and Jenny's going to have to be very careful as the story progresses not to go over that line. However, one character that holds on to a lot of aspects of the old world is that of Mark. Mark Fitzpatrick is kind of one of the outliers of the main cast in terms of his design. As I realized as I was writing the book, it was getting a bit theropod heavy. I do love theropods. So I wanted to feature an ornithopod amongst the main cast. His design reflects that as the characters get older, he remains as one of the smaller members of this group, one of the smaller changes to have been reborn in this new world. In terms of prehistoric inspirations for his creature design, smaller ornithopods such as Orodromeus or Hypsilophodon were huge inspirations. They're amazing little dinosaurs that often get overlooked, and I really was excited to feature a creature based on their body plans in this story. However, there also are other features such as ankylosaurid features, or particularly basal ankylosaurid or armored dinosaurs such as Scelidosaurus was one of the main inspirations for his design. Now, before the event that transformed the entire world into a prehistoric battleground, essentially, Mark was a very intelligent, a very crafty individual. He was a budding artisan and engineer who, more than anything else, absolutely loved creating little machines and little works of wood, metal, and whatever else he could scrounge together. A skill that very much allowed him to gain an edge in the new world. And lucky enough for him, while he is one of the smaller changes to have hatched out into this new world, he was born with gloriously dexterous front hands that allow him to manipulate stuff rather easily and allow him, most importantly, to create the various devices and machines that he uses to get an edge over some of the more dangerous creatures and threats that are present in the new world. And his knowledge and expertise can range from anywhere from knowledge of farming practices and fertilization and how to best grow certain things and how to basically give himself a readily available food source without having much to work with in the first place, to creating little devices that can help him and his friends survive in this new world. Everything from scavenge syringes to administer healing tonics, to switchblades made out of eel skulls, and even one of his more iconic features is his mask, his gas mask essentially, created from bits of shells, stone, bone, and even two ammonite shells that act as the filters, which is stuffed with a variety of plant materials and spider webbing to filter out harmful chemicals or smokes in the air. Another important piece of equipment that he often makes use of is his cloak. This camouflaging cloak is very efficient at keeping him hidden from the various threats of the new world. However, as time goes on, he does start to experiment with a few other different kinds of cloaks that might even give him some more fantastic abilities as time goes on. But in terms of fantastic abilities, there is one character who is born into this new world with both one of the greatest gifts that you could ask for in a brutal world where survival is key, along with a curse that can seriously hamper him in the wrong situation. And that is Cole. Cole Donahue. Cole was reborn into the new world, conjoined with another creature. Two pterosaurs now sharing the same body. Fortunately for Cole, he is in control of the motor functions and movement of the limbs and everything of his body. However, this second entity, which he comes to refer to as Jay, acts of his own accord and does not seem to possess any ability to communicate or even comprehend communication that the other characters manage to establish with one another. Jay is defensive, aggressive, and can even turn on Cole in moments of extreme stress. But, of course, being born as a pterosaur, Cole is gifted with a very unique ability, the power of flight. This is not something that comes easy to him. It's something that he has to take a lot of time to master, especially with such an encumbrance, in the form of Jay. But such an ability will make him an extremely valuable asset to the main characters in their quest for survival. This is overall one of my favorite designs from the book. Heavily inspired, I like to wear my inspirations on my sleeve. Heavily inspired by multiple already existing dinosaur-related media, including the old Turok comics. I remember one of those. It was the first one I saw. I had a two-headed pterosaur on the front of it, along with Strafe from Transformers: Age of Extinction. While that movie, not the biggest fan of, I was a huge fan of the Dinobot designs. And this character allowed me to kind of showcase the genetic madness that was going on in the creation of this new world, and allowed me to incorporate Cole and Jay into some really interesting scenarios as they try to survive this brutal new world. Inspirations other than the media I mentioned also include the likes of Ludodactylus, kind of more basal pterosaurs such as Darwinopterus, and also the likes of modern day loons in terms of the coloration. There is one last character I'm going to talk about in this video in terms of the character designs, and this next one will contain major spoilers for the story. So while it won't ruin every surprise, I do encourage you to go read the story if you have it there before you watch the next part, because the last character I'm going to talk about in this video in terms of their design and its inspirations is that of the story's main antagonist, Alistair Vaughn. And straight off the bat, nice and simple, Vaughn's design is based off of, in my opinion, what is one of the most terrifying groups of prehistoric animals ever to have lived, the terror birds. Terror birds are, in my opinion, while they have appeared in some really great forms of media that really inspired me when I was younger over the years, such as Primeval, Walking with Beasts, and that incredible scene in 10,000 BC, terror birds, I feel, have been underused a lot, and I really wanted to put one in the focus of this story. This was a design, I did not come up with this design specifically when I came up with the others years upon years ago when I was a kid. I came up with this design a few years later during my teenage years, and I don't think that's very surprising because it is admittedly an extremely edgy design, but it was one design I had a lot of fun creating. Some aspects that remained in the design right from its inception are the jagged beak, the alabaster white plumage, and that red cloak he wears. The reason I added this scarf was originally because one of the translations I've seen for the name of Forest Racus, which is a particularly famous type of terror bird, is ragbearer. For some reason, just this idea of a Forest Racus kind of donning these billowing red cloaks, kind of heavily inspired by the design of Todd McFarlane's Spawn. It just stuck with me, and I really enjoyed this character design, and it really stuck with me, and it was definitely kind of the key look for the main antagonist that I was after. Other additions to the design that kind of took place later include the curved horns at the top of his head, give him that devilish look, along with the razor-sharp claws hidden in his wings like switchblades. The spurs are inspired by modern-day roosters that are on the back of his legs. And then the two long, extremely sharp and hardened tail feathers that sit at the end of his plumage. These were inspired by the ovipositors on parasitic wasps, because in terms of character, Vaughn is what I like to refer to as a social parasite. An incredibly destructive one at that. Vaughn likes to insert himself into groups and situations where at first he might appear amiable and kind of has a very charming side that allows him to get in people's good graces, and he'll assert himself over time as a dominant figure in any social circle he appears in, and in an almost impulsive and instinctual manner he will sow the seeds of chaos. He'll spread rumors that start arguments between people that were once friends, and eventually these groups would basically tear themselves apart. And that was in the human world. In the savage new world, he's allowed to take this kind of malign gift he has and put it to the test in the most extreme measures. and it makes him an absolute tyrant and a dangerous villain. One that I sincerely hope you love to hate if you read this book. But anyway, guys, that is largely the inspirations behind the central characters to the story of Bygone Dawn. And if all this sounds like something you would like to read, feel free to head on over to Amazon. Bygone Dawn is available both in Kindle and paperback format. And if you do read it, or if you have read it, feel free to let me know what you think of it, either down in the comments or message me directly. I'm always looking for feedback on the story, especially because I'm working on the sequel at the moment. Or let me know what prehistoric creatures you would love to see make an appearance in the sequel. But thanks for watching, guys, and as always, take care.